Einstein didn't want a universe that had a beginning, and maybe you know the story of the origins of Big Bang.
Share them.
Yeah. So in early 1900s, Einstein is mathematically modeling the universe. He's coming up with his theories of general relativity and special relativity. Yeah, relativity. And you've got Father Georges Lemaitre, a Jesuit priest in Belgium, who takes Einstein's math and starts working on them and realizes that his mathematics imply that the universe is expanding. So Lemaitre calls this the primeval atom. He points out that if you regress the universe according to Einstein's math, it means like rewind the clock on the universe, everything contracts down to a beginning. So Lemaitre, this Jesuit Belgian priest, begins to publish papers showing that it looks like, according to Einstein's mathematics, that the universe expanded from a point, and that's the beginning of Big Bang cosmology. So Lemaitre starts publishing those things in the 1920s, and in the very early 30s, you've got Edwin Hubble, an American astronomer at Mount Wilson Observatory in California. He's looking out at the stars, and he begins to realize, all the galaxies are moving away. They're all expanding. So the universe looks like it's expanding. And it's expanding at the rate that Lemaitre's calculations predict. Okay. So these two things come together. Now, in the meanwhile, Lemaitre and Einstein were in communication, and Einstein famously said, or at least he's attributed to have said to Lemaitre, your math is great, but your physics are abominable. Okay. It's like, yeah, I see that your equations work, but the idea of the whole universe going back to a point, that's just like, there's like a visceral rejection of that, And so Einstein took Lemaitre's mathematics and introduced a constant into the formula to keep the universe from expanding, because Einstein wanted a steady state universe. He wanted a universe without a beginning.
Yep.
Because a universe without a beginning enables you to say that the universe is the one necessary being.
There you go, yeah.
Which you and I know about from working with Thomas's proofs. This is the first proof, the second proof from motion, from causality. They both lead you back to an unmoved mover, an uncaused cause. Father Spitzer calls this the single unconditioned reality. Right? So if you have an eternal universe, you can just say, I don't need a God. Yeah. The universe can be my unconditioned reality. The universe can be my unmoved mover.
Bedrock,
right. And Einstein wanted that. So Einstein resisted Lemaitre's arguments and introduced a constant into his formulas to keep the universe stable. All right. Now, when Hubble had these observations that matched Lemaitre's math, then Einstein gave up and started to be open to, what we now call Big Bang cosmology. Now, where do we get the term Big Bang? Big Bang was actually a term of contempt invented by Sir Fradd Hoyle. He was on a BBC interview, I think, in the 50s, and he said something to the effect of, I don't like this Big Bang cosmology. This idea that the universe had a start, a beginning.
Yeah.
And so he came up with that term, but the term stuck. As often happens in science. And so, what began as a term of contempt, but the question is, why did Hoyle have such contempt for this idea? And the answer is ultimately philosophical and religious. He didn't like a universe with a beginning either. He wanted the steady state universe, which he maintained to his death. No beginning, no end. Therefore, the universe can be your necessary being. You don't need a God. And Hoyle, interestingly, struggled with theism all his life. And it's unclear what exactly he believed about God. Maybe somebody knows, maybe somebody's got a biography on him. I've read a lot of stuff on him without ever reaching clarity on what did he go to his deathbed believing. But he also made these fantastic confessions. I mean, later in this interview, maybe we'll talk about cosmic fine-tuning. But he looked at all of the the mathematics behind the universe. And he has this famous quote that he gave at an address once where he says, "A common sense interpretation of the facts would suggest that a super intellect has monkeyed with the laws of physics and chemistry, and that there are no blind forces in the universe." I mean, what a great confession from a guy who, again, that's testimony against interest. He was not a Christian, not a practicing religious person, resisted theistic implications, and yet was kind of forced by the data to admit that. And I really like the way he phrases it, a common sense interpretation. Because one of the things I want to communicate in our discussion together, Matt, is that what I try to impart to my students is the sense that the common sense interpretation of reality, when we look at the scientific evidence, is that there is a creator. That's what everybody kind of perceives intuitively. And it's not Christians who run away from common sense into abstract argumentation, etc. It's actually atheists who end up fleeing from the evidence into a refuge of abstract mathematics and wild theories like the multiverse and so on, to get away from the testimony of common sense. So again, Hoyle, Britain's greatest astrophysicist, what is it? A common sense interpretation. That means kind of the prima facie impression that you have, the initial intuition that human reason that's working properly, like Plantinga would talk about the proper
cognitive functioning.
Yeah, proper cognitive functioning. When you look at all this evidence, you would come to the conclusion that there's an intellect behind this, a super intellect behind this that's designing everything.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.